Because it is now my contention. You ready? You ready for me to just spit this at you, Paul? It is my contention that not only is Alabama, in my mind, the favorite to win the SEC, I think Alabama is now the favorite to win the national championship, because this is the exact kind of team that Nick Saban wins with, the one that doesn't have all of the glitz, glamour, the one that he really has to coach. And after what they did to LSU last night, I'm waiting for someone to change my mind.
Well, I mean, you're on a good track there, Matt, because what's so impressive, and I'm sure you crunched the numbers yesterday, but you look at the second half. I mean, they are suffocating teams in the second half, and that's how you win championships. And the offense is certainly good enough. Jalen Milroe performed well, and they really, I mean, they've got tricky type of games ahead, but nothing that should get in their way. And Georgia is not a perfect team, so I mean, I'm not ready to jump ahead 4 weeks, but I can't find a lot of fault with what you're saying. And as far as Nick Saban is concerned, you know he's dialing it up brilliantly, and it was a bumpy start, and maybe we'll look back at that complete meltdown against Texas and all the histrionics of the next week as what really turned it around. I mean, just to think that Tyler Buckner started for this team, Matt, might be one of the great trivia questions in college football history.
Yeah, look, the South Florida near miss when they gave the other two quarterbacks a shot. Ty Simpson was in there, benched Jalen Milroe. They went to Tampa. It was just a bad situation. They seem to have turned the season around. But Paul, am I accurate in saying this? And this is a very treetops comment, and you would know better than anyone. I look at this Alabama team. Like, I could look last year and tell you that Will Anderson Jr. and Bryce Young were bona fide superstars, two of the best of their position in all of college football. I can't, maybe outside of Dallas Turner, maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry, maybe, I can't give you one bona fide star on Alabama, and I think that that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have burgeoning stars, and Caleb Downs is probably the guy that we'll be talking about for the next 2 years after this, because he won't be around for his final year. But I think you're right. Now, I think Alabama, as unfortunate as it was last year, having to play in Knoxville and Baton Rouge in a matter of 3 weeks, got the good fortune this year. I mean, they had those games at home. I mean, LSU is a terribly flawed team that can overwhelm you because of the dynamic nature of the receivers and Jaden Daniels, but they couldn't do it last night. I mean, every time LSU did not convert, Matt, I was just marking that down as a disaster, because they were, the fourth down call was just terrible. That was one. I mean, I felt like they maybe got it back at the end of the half, and then they missed the field goal. I mean, but they counted though, and those were possessions that they desperately needed, and in the end they didn't have. But if you watch the A&M game, the Tennessee game, the Ole Miss game, we've seen the template. It's hang in there, try not to get behind, and they weren't, of course, and then just literally maul the team in the second half. And that was the mantra that Nick Saban brought to Alabama at his opening press conference. He said, we are going to overwhelm you. We are going to dominate you, where by the time we get to the fourth quarter, you're going to throw up your hands and say, I've had enough.
That's it. And we were talking about it during the game, watching it last night. It was clear, and it was similar to the USC Washington game, which we'll get to later, but it was similar in that you were waiting to see who was going to break serve. It was legitimately a break serve game for both schools. Like, it was back and forth, who was going to force a punt, who was going to make a play defensively, who was going to make a stop. And Alabama in the second half started to do that. And when you brought up the fourth down play, not the conversion that LSU had. It goes back to, why are we simply just handing teams momentum?
I don't understand.
I don't. Why are we handing teams momentum in college football now?
I mean, you've got a really good quarterback, but I don't care if you got Tom Brady. It's still a lot of things can go wrong. Where you've got to. I mean, I really. I mean, there were some really questionable decisions on the LSU side, but hey, it's only their third loss of the season. They still got a bowl game ahead.
Yeah, I want to do that for a minute, because you and I both Really like Brian Kelly. I think he is really got that thing headed in the right direction. I think they were a year ahead last year, which gave some people some hope. I had him in the college football playoff this year, so I was dead wrong. No, I mean, now this is an obituary on their SEC championship hopes this year. How would you assess this LSU team now that we know they won't be playing for the SEC title?
I think a collage of mistakes have been made there. From I think designing the defense early on, playing with Harold Perkins, maybe costing them the Florida State game, maybe not. I mean, that game we knew that would be a brawl, but that losing the LSU game, losing the Ole Miss game, they probably shouldn't have lost that game. But they were flawed. Brian Kelly told me last Monday, and you can take this, but I took it seriously. He said, really, right now we don't have the players to compete with Georgia and Alabama, and he's telling the truth, and it's on the defensive side. And there's just too many holes, and they've had injuries, and it was just a collection of things. And I really don't think it would have mattered if Jaden Daniels had been in there for the final play of the game. Alabama was going to figure it out.
Yeah, look, the one thing became crystal clear to me, and I believe, again, I don't know him like you do. I would say in Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama, if they go on to win the SEC championship, and if they go on to make the college football playoff and win the national championship, I believe this will go down as one of Nick Saban's great coaching jobs at Alabama, just for the simple fact that he had to coach his ass off with this team, because it wasn't the teams of yesteryear where you were rolling out first-round wide receivers, you were rolling out the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line, you were rolling out 3 All-Americans on defense. You didn't know who your quarterback was going to be. You had to coach this team to greatness, and he's on the doorstep of doing it again.
Yeah, I mean, he is like every great athlete you've ever covered, Matt. And I'll use, I think, more golf than any other sport where if you study Nicklaus, if you study Tiger Woods, they were not competing with Phil Mickelson and Arnold Palmer. They were competing with themselves.
Yeah,
and that's what Nick Saban does. And I think everybody got drawn into the Kirby Smart versus Nick Saban. I mean, he's not thinking about Kirby Smart like we think he is. And a couple of times I've seen him this year, he seemed energized. And I mean, he knew the flaws, and the flaw was at quarterback and offensive line. And both of those have been corrected. The defense looked out of sorts during the Texas game, but that was maybe greatness on the other side of the ball.
sure.
And I think he's had the advantage too. And I'm not trying to crib my way to a Nick Saban greatest season ever, but I think you're right. He's had the advantage of not having to really play an elite team yet in the SEC. Every single team that he's beaten, Ole Miss, A&M, Tennessee, and now LSU had flaws. Although Ole Miss had the fewest amount of flaws, the flaw in that game was the head coach just trying to get too cute.
So I want to stay out in the SEC West after Alabama made their statement against LSU. Give me something I can feel.